we have one more panel for you for today, much more tomorrow, of course. And this next panel is looking at the opportunities for scale-ups, and there is a lot to talk about. And this next panel is luckily in the very, very safe hands of none other than Fabian Nadler, Head of Digital Insurance and InsurTech Bitkom, who is here now. And Fabian, off you go.
Thank you, Monica, and also a very warm welcome from my side. I feel very honored to moderate the last, but probably also one of the most interesting panels at day one of the Digital Finance Conference. Yeah, the title is Challenges for the Challenger. And I would say, in contrast to the often quite negative public opinion we have, Germany and Europe have so many successful startups, especially in the fintech and insurtech space. And today, we want to talk exactly about these players, the players who challenge the traditional insurers, the traditional banks. The challengers have gained a relevant market share over the last years, and they have contributed very positively to the image of the financial industry. But nevertheless, of course, they also faced a few challenges, especially when it comes to their massive growth process over the last few years. And that are all the topics I'm really looking forward to talking about with true experts in the next 30 minutes. So I'm very happy to welcome Jessica Holzbach, co-founder of Penta, Georg Hauer from N26, Christian Wiens from Getsafe, and last but not least, Kim Felix from Raisin. And to get the panel started, I would like to start with you, Georg. You're working for N26. Maybe you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there, what's your position, and what has been your biggest personal challenge in the last year.
Happy to do that. Thanks a lot for having us. My name is Georg. I'm the general manager for the DACH region and Northern Europe. I lead in total a region of 15 countries, which is a concept, so approximately a little bit more than half of our global revenue. I'm with N26 for more than 3.5 years, and it's been an incredibly exciting time. But at the same time, my personal challenge has, of course, been always to adapt to changing environments, changing challenges, but at the same time to also jump into new challenges and solve problems while still running a large company at high speed. And I think this adaptability and flexibility, which N26 and other scale-ups demand from every single individual, has been at the same time the most challenging aspect, but also one of the most exciting parts of my job.
Cool. That was a very good start. Thank you, Georg. Let me come to you, Christian. You founded Getsafe. Maybe not everyone is very familiar with Getsafe, so tell us a little bit more about Getsafe. And what has been your biggest personal challenge in the not very normal year 2020, 2021?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, everybody. So it's great to be here at a digital conference again with a lot of fintechs, maybe also some insurtechs. I think in this panel I'm the only one kind of holding up the insurance flag. We call ourselves a neo-insurer, and we probably have also created that category a little bit here in Europe or in Germany. We are a direct-to-consumer insurance company that mainly serves digital native customers. We are mobile first. We have 200,000 customers in Germany and the UK. We are expanding to the rest of Europe as well. We have been doing this for the last few years, going from being a broker and now a full stack insurance company, to get the very short story. And for me, is what's special about Getsafe, and that's a neutral comment, is we're based in Heidelberg and not in Berlin, as many of the other fintechs or insurtechs, which for us was a conscious decision because both of us founders are tech founders. I'm a mechanical engineer. My co-founder is a physicist, and we have built a tech culture here around all the strong tech universities we have in the region around Heidelberg, from Stuttgart to Karlsruhe and Frankfurt. And we have very low fluctuation here, right? So people that join Getsafe really stay for a long time. And I think that was the first big challenge for us last year, is to kind of not be able to live this company culture in the office with that stable team we built over the years, and adopt to a remote setup, which of course for a startup is always possible. But for me, as I come from that world and I'm an office guy, was definitely a big challenge on the business side.
Cool. Thanks for your insights. And maybe we can have a closer look later on the tech culture. I think that's a very important factor with scale-ups. Looking at Jessica, I would say the last year, or especially this year, was very special for you. You founded Penta and left the company a few weeks ago. So was it very difficult for you to leave the company? I guess yes. And how do you feel now?
I was the one forgetting to unmute myself. Sorry for that. I was actually thinking of how I would introduce myself here and thought about I'm a retired co-founder. Maybe that's the title right now. Didn't come up with anything better. It was definitely a special year. I built up Penta for the last 4.5 years. It was always challenging. It was always interesting. And this year decided to leave. And I think the only reason why it was also possible to leave for me is because there's a strong team. We're growing as a company. Everything is actually going in the right direction. And I think only when something is going really well, you have the luxury as a founder to also say, that's it for me. And I'm off to a new challenge. And that's what I'm doing for now. And then we'll see what comes in the future.
Cool. That sounds very interesting. Let me come to you, Kim Felix. You're part of Raisin. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing there, and maybe also about your biggest challenge you faced in the last year.
Yeah, so I'm responsible at Raisin for the investment and pension division, which grew quite quickly. So actually, it's a nice coincidence. Today, we had an announcement that we surpassed 1 billion in assets under management just in this division. It's the quickest growing division. The rest of the business, deposit business, is a bit older. And I joined Raisin nearly 2 years ago. And it's super exciting to see how we were able to scale basically on the base of the deposit offer to completely new businesses, which on the one hand is the investment part, which is what people would refer to as a robo-advisor, although it's a bit of a difficult term. And the other one is a pension business. We acquired Fair 1.5 years ago and integrated them over the last year. And we are offering different kinds of pension and retirement products. My biggest challenge also comes with the investment part, of course. So last year, everyone probably will remember the Corona dip in financial markets. So of course, that's always a stressful phase. We managed to get through all of it, growing every single month, which was super cool. So even in March, we had net inflows, which was not what everyone was expecting, I think. So there were a lot of incumbents, definitely, that told us, I helped building up Liquid. So I remember from 5 years ago that said, well, wait until you see the first crisis and then people will drag out their money because they need someone to talk to. And it was cool to see that doing good CRM, educating clients a bit, apparently really helps.
Cool, thank you very much. And I think if there's one thing in common you all have is that you have grown massively over the last years. And of course, it's not that easy to grow that quickly, and it's always also combined with a few challenges. And that's what that's where I would like to dip deeper a little bit. Maybe we start with you, Christian from Getsafe. You also have grown massively. What were the biggest challenges you faced over the last, I would say, maybe 2 years? Was it hiring that many people or owning so many customers? So give us a little bit more insights about your growth process.
Yeah, sure. For us, the insurance business is, and I think that is probably a misconception, often bundled under the fintech roof. I think it's a very different business with different dynamics and things that for customers are also important. I think the engagement is a different one, right? You check your bank account, maybe, and even your investment account, maybe on a daily basis. Probably you don't do so traditionally, at least with insurance. And of course, we live from a business model where we kind of give a promise to pay many claims, but at the end of the day, economically, it must also make sense. So we must kind of earn more premium than claims that we have to pay. So we must be very accurate in our underwriting, also because we then keep customers for a long time. I think the one exciting thing about insurance is that you acquire a customer, and by nature, not because Getsafe is super special, but by nature, this customer probably stays for 20, 30, 40 years. I always tell the story of my grandfather that just turned 100 this year. And he still always recommended Allianz to me because Allianz existed 100 years ago, and he still has the policies. So I think this is the kind of business that you need to have in mind when you build things. I think that's super challenging because you want to. You can't, I mean, we are all regulated, right, by the regulator. This is definitely one kind of constraint or a challenge, which is a good thing for customers, for sure. But then you need to think about how can I underwrite a customer today or acquire a customer, and how can that customer be happy for many, many decades, but also be a profitable customer. So managing growth while managing also loss ratios. And you may have heard that from other insurtechs or insurance companies. That's the big topic. Is definitely a challenge. And it's even more so for us that because we have a business where we are, first of all, offering multiple insurance lines, right? So we acquire customers when they're pretty young, 25, 27. They buy 80% buy their first insurance product ever with us. And then we want to grow with these customers because essentially every 2 or 3 years, you come across a life event. It can be that you buy a new bike. It can that trivial, but also start a family, buy some real estate, move in together with your partner, and so you travel, so on and so forth. And then during these life events, you want more coverage, right? You want to cover these life events and things as well. So the business model that we offer is not just focusing on one business line of insurance, but it's complex. And I think that complexity has been more of a challenge than I would say the whole organizational part that is always a challenge, right? Growing a team, doing so in Heidelberg, where we are, may sound strange for the Berlin startups. We are the by far #1 startup. Everybody else is doing biotech and medtech here. And there's SAP, of course. But I would say that challenge, and with the last step that we took then to do that internationally, I mean, all the big incumbent insurers are big businesses that make 150 billion in revenue every year and have kind of a global footprint, but are not global companies. They don't have a consistent, I don't know if kind of my banking colleagues can agree on that, but they don't have a consistent tech-powered offering all over the world. So taking that step as well, I think it's just a very complex business model. You need to plan into the future for many, many years, if not decades. I think that was the trickiest thing along the last years when building Getsafe.
Cool. Thanks, Christian. Looking at Georg, you're responsible for the DACH region and the Nordics in N26. And maybe if we look back 2 years, what would you have done differently, like from the today's perspective? Are there any things you can maybe also tell our participants we have here in the audience? We have many early stage startups. Are there any hints you can say, oh, you should really avoid this one thing?
So I think what's important is to consider is when you're building a business, you will make mistakes, and you might regret certain things, but at the same time, all those small mistakes essentially led to exactly the that we are right here. So making mistakes is also an important part of the learning aspect of a company as well as of an organization. So what would I have done differently? Yes, there are many things that I might have done differently in the hindsight, but at the same time, they were an important aspect of N26 growing into the organization that we are today.
Cool.
There's specific topics that I would mention that I would say are typically the topics that you really think and really entrepreneur in this room can agree that the biggest mistakes, actually the most costly mistakes you can make as an entrepreneur, is hiring the wrong person. Especially, and the smaller you are, the more critical each individual team member is. So if I think about the success factors of being N26 becoming such a successful company, where all those individual contributors and individual managers we hired who were absolute rock stars. And once in a while, there is one person that may or may not have been good, but there was either not a fit or it just didn't work out. And those are typically the decisions that you would change in the hindsight. But again, as I said, typically the person that followed up after that person typically might even be still part of the team today and is an important aspect of how we built the business. So I would have done very few things differently, but the few things that I would do differently are typically related to the team.
I think that was very helpful for many participants we have here online. Looking at you, Jessica, you founded Penta, I think, 5 years ago and left it after a very strong Series B. What was more difficult, setting up the company or scaling up towards a Series B, a bigger team? I think you also expanded to Italy. So what was the most difficult part?
I guess you grow with the challenges that you have, right? And I feel like a lot of times when people look back, they romanticize a bit about the past. So they're really like, oh, back in the early days when we were 5 people sitting in this little office, everything was so amazing. But it's just that you always, looking back in hindsight, everything seems a bit more easier and a bit like you romanticize it. So I think it's just different phases and they all have their challenges. In the beginning, it's mainly that you join with a couple of people and you build a product, right? You focus like crazy on the customer, which you obviously should maintain. But the more you continue, the more you also have to focus on building a company. And there I would even double down to what Georg said. When you build a company, it's mainly about the people. And I would say, for example, I guess when I look back, I spent probably 50% on hiring, maybe another 20% on people. So maybe hiring a business people officer, a chief business officer for the management team. I think that would be something that is super, super helpful, because then you also go through the different phases where you, in the beginning, everyone can focus on building the product and then slowly make the switch to building a company and don't have this hard clash in culture, which sometimes when you don't really take care of it, can obviously turn sour. So I think every phase has their obstacles and you just need to keep growing with them and get the right people on board.
Thank you. So I always hear people, I hear tech, I hear culture. And I already mentioned that scale-ups and especially fintechs and insurtechs have contributed very positively on the image of the financial industry. And that's where I would like to focus in the next part of the panel. I think Europe really needs a strong financial ecosystem, and this ecosystem should be digital, of course, and it should be sovereign. And that's where I would like to know, maybe looking at you, Georg, do you think that fintechs, that insurtechs are creating the jobs of tomorrow in the financial industry, or do you see there strong cooperation between incumbents and startups, or like, what's your point of view on it?
It's a great question. And in fact, especially when we look at an industries such as startup or fintech industry holistically, it's not just about the innovation, but from a country perspective, from a societal perspective, it's a lot about the jobs and the economic value that these companies create for the countries and maybe even Europe as a continent. And we have to come to terms with the fact that the time that people would walk into a bank branch and line up in order to open a bank account are clearly over. So bank branches will disappear. And this decade, which we've just entered, is certainly the last decade where bank branches really will play any major role. At the same time, the importance of fintechs and challenger banks is increasing drastically. So it's not just a question on whether, but just by when challenger banks and other fintech will generate more jobs or more new jobs than the incumbent banking industry. Just to give you a few examples, we are N26 in the next 12 months is going to hire more than 1,000 new people. We are currently hiring more than 100 people every single month, most of them joining our Berlin office. But at the same time, we are currently also scaling up our technology center based in Vienna, where we're planning to hire up to 300 people. And we're also scaling our office in Barcelona, where we already have 150 team members and plan to scale that up quite fast. So clearly, fintech and startups are creating the jobs of the future.
Indeed, I think that are massive numbers, and if there are people here from the audience interested in working for N26, I think just get in touch with Georg. I've already mentioned that fintechs and insurtechs contributing very positively to this image of the financial industry, which is sometimes not that positive. Looking at Raisin, what I read all the time, that you win all these awards from consumer magazines. So what are you doing differently, and why do we need startups to have such customer-centric products? Why isn't this coming from the incumbents?
I guess one thing Jessica also mentioned is the customer focus. I think Amazon made it one of their values. It's customer obsession. And it makes a lot of sense to really focus on happiness, because what we have been seeing for quite some time is that our customers, once they are with us for 6 to 12 months, they really start heavily referring other friends, colleagues of theirs to us. So it was from the beginning a very important part of our growth strategy. And I think it's also driven by the culture of the company. So we talked a lot about the culture and the importance of culture, the importance of the team. And if you build a team that's really driven by delivering great products to the clients, if you have a customer service team where you don't have people that are bored out and didn't find another job, so they took this, but really people that actually love working there, clients will notice. And once clients have noticed, it will deliver an organic stream of growth that otherwise you cannot achieve. And I think to some extent, the difference between incumbents and the digital players or challengers, however you want to call it, has to do with the incumbents sitting on a lot of clients, virtually, literally speaking, meaning they have to deal with far larger, at least for the moment, client numbers. So sometimes they, I think, are just not able to deliver the same kind of service. And what you can also see is for them, attrition or churn is just something they calculate with. And what you see with startups or younger companies, they need every client. And if you need every single client, you also behave like you need every single client. And I guess that's a very big difference. On the other hand, what we also see is clients appreciate to have personal contact, especially in the investment business. People or clients want to see actual people. And I guess this is something where we can at least learn in the sense of how to address clients in a good way, because I think a lot of the incumbents did a good job over the past decades to think about how can we address clients, how can we educate clients. So I guess there can be transfers of knowledge in both directions.
Thank you. And also bringing maybe a little bit more of the introtech perspective into the discussion. I've looked up the rating of the Getsafe app just right before the panel, and it was really high, especially for an insurance app. Maybe, Christian, you can tell us a little bit more how you can, do you make insurance sexy at the end, or where these high ratings are coming from at the end?
Thanks first of all for the credits here. I hope, of course, that you're using the app as a customer, and that's why you're so.
I do.
No, it's a fair question, and we look at two worlds, right? Essentially, we try to benchmark ourselves with all the big kind of, let's say, tech companies of the world, like the Airbnbs, the Ubers, and so on, and many others. Which is something that the insurance industry clearly hasn't done. And then, of course, we try to benchmark, and that's also back to, let's say, ratings or awards with the insurance industry. Like, are we doing a better job in providing better products and service at a better price, better speed, and so on? And I think it's always, for me, in insurance, but not just in insurance, in every industry, it's also very closely connected to this why. Why do you do this? Does the company have a purpose? Do we enjoy the feedback from customers where we could be really helpful? Let's say a family where the whole house burned down, and we could in seconds be there for them because they could access us on the app, send all the relevant pictures, but also get extra services like we would book them in a hotel room, and so these smaller things that I think get easier and more accessible if you have technology in between. And that was also my first insurance experience. I had a claim 5 years ago, and on a Saturday, and I went to my parents, and we couldn't reach the broker that sold us the policy, right? We could reach him on Monday. And so I think the secret sauce is exactly what the others already said, is caring about every single customers, having an inside-out principle. It must start with the team that has a purpose, that loves to do that and to kind of serve every single customer. But then it also, in insurance at least, has a lot to do with technology and with the opportunity that we had to build things on the green field. And I think there I see big differences also to banking, for example, because I personally have been using online banking at least for many years already, but it's hard to have something like online insurance. You may be able to buy an insurance policy with a direct insurer, but try to change your address or banking details of all the customers that switch to challenger banks, of course, right, in the app, or try to cancel your policy before it expires. In the UK, for example, incumbents charge 30-40 pounds just for, let's say, for the extra service fee for kind of, changing something in your policy or canceling it before the expiration, before it expires. And so all these things add up. And also the ambition, of course, is not to compare ourselves only with the insurance company, but you need a technology advantage in our perspective to make these things gradually happen on the pricing, on the experience side, and then at the end of the day also on the brand side. And that's why we try to be the best rated insurance app in Europe. But to be honest, on the App Store, there's not so much competition by insurance companies.
Okay, so let me sum it up. Caring about every customer is at the core of all challenger banks and neo-insurers. Unfortunately, we just have a few minutes left. So I have one final question for all of you. I think it's our common wish that that scale-ups, that the fintechs, the insurtechs have an even bigger influence in the next years. So what has your company has to do in the next 5 years to grow even bigger and to have an even bigger impact? Let me start with you, Jessica, because you have left Penta and can quite talk easily about your opinions.
Yeah, well, it's easier to talk than to actually do it. So maybe from that perspective, you're right. No, I think the biggest challenge is really to get, at least for Penta, a bit out of the niche, because we do have 50% of the customers who are startups, who are already digital savvy, but I don't know who said it before, but still the incumbents are sitting on a lot of existing customers. And I think the challenge is to get a bit out of this niche, out of the bubble, and go into the mass market and make it really like a mass company, not only in Germany, but in whole Europe. And I think that's only a question of time. It needs a bit of time to get there, but I think that's the only way in the road to go into the future.
Cool, thank you. And what steps does N26 has to go in the next years?
Yeah. So I would second what Jessica just said is N26 essentially moved from being a startup to being a global bank that today serves more than 7 million customers all around the world, or at least in Europe and the United States. And while also growing into this global bank, we also have to take over more and more responsibility, the responsibility that we have within the banking world, but also the responsibility that we have in the society. Today with 7 million customers, we are bigger than most regional banks in Germany. And there will be a time that N26 has more customers than any German bank. And when we grow from being the challenger to potentially at some point being one of the biggest and most relevant players in the European banking industry, obviously, we also need to take a bigger role in shaping the industry, taking on responsibility, and we need to become a leading player and an innovator, not only in the customer experience, but also in other aspects of the banking world, and namely the compliance part, which remains hidden from customers in many aspects, but still is a core aspect of the banking world, which hasn't seen as much innovation than the rest of the banking world. But N26 definitely can play a big role in there as well.
So that's getting exciting in the next years. Looking at Christian from Getsafe, what can we expect from you in the next years? And I'm looking forward to a short answer.
Yeah, I got that. Two things. One is what N26, for example, already did is there's not even an insurtech that has done anything globally or internationally. I think bringing digital insurance really across continents or countries. We start with Europe, of course, is a big dream, and it's becoming true, but it's a lot of work. And the other one is people are spending 2,000 euros on insurance in Europe every year. It's kind of 5 times what people spend on Amazon on average. So it's really a big spend for households. And we are scratching the surface, right? We are focusing on home insurance, on the smaller products, and we want to go into life and health insurance and the bigger verticals. I think that's the other big step we're going to take.
Cool, thank you. And the last words go to Kim. What are the biggest steps Raisin is going to go in the next years?
So we're a marketplace model, and we work with a lot of partners, nearly 200, that are all on some kind of legacy IT infrastructure, which makes it a very complex business from an IT perspective. We already made, I think, quite big steps towards a completely scalable infrastructure. But with growth, also growth coming from outside the European Union soon, or outside the EU soon, with our US business, I think it will be super important. And in any kind of marketplace business that's a B2B in some regards marketplace, it's really important to make the IT infrastructure scalable. And the other important part, I guess it's always a bit boring if everyone agrees, but keep the customer obsession, which is such an important value. And if you combine a scalable infrastructure on the IT side with customer obsession, I think actually all of our companies will be definitely on a very good way to further growth.
Cool. But unfortunately, the time is over. And I simply can say thank you very much for these very interesting insights. And I hope to meet you next year again in person here in Berlin. And stay healthy.